Michael, it's obviously clear that you have a huge passion for analog film. When did this passion begin? And can you remember your first experience of shooting film?
My passion for analog film uh, has a lot to do with my age, and the fact that I was born in the 1960s. So when I was growing up, there were no other options other than to shoot film, and I grew up in a middle class working class neighborhood, and my dad was a film enthusiast, and he would shoot all of the holidays, um, both still photography and movie film, and I just took a liking to it. So when there was an opportunity, I to get a hand-me-down camera. In the case, my first camera was a 126 format Kodak Instamatic camera. I gladly took it, and to shoot my own my own photography, and that excelled in high school, where when at the time there was a camera club and a dark room, and that allowed me to really learn how to develop my own film, and it just became a passion, a personal passion, and that continues to this day. Like most people of my generation, I did a little dabbling in the early 2000s with some digital, but it never really suited me. So uh, I really always just kept shooting, whether still photography or movies using film.
Yeah, that's great. Um, Now, it says you studied cinematography under the cinematographer Bedrick. I might say this wrong. Batka.
Vodka, yeah.
What did he sort of teach you, and how is that sort of related to sort of your own personal projects?
Well, after high school, when I enrolled at the local university here in New Jersey, they offered filmmaking classes, which I took because at the time I was shooting personal home movies using my dad's Super 8 camera. So going to college and taking a class that really sparked my deep interest in making movies, which the professor at the university here in New Jersey, uh, Professor Susan Tarbox, she was a student of Beta Rich Botka, who was at New York University teaching cinematography. So I took all of the filmmaking classes as a undergraduate, and her recommendation was to go to graduate school and learn under Beta Rick Baca, who she recommended me. So I started that. I took a summer of intensive workshops, and then I enrolled for graduate school. That's another story because I didn't go to graduate school. I got a job at Comcast, but that's a whole nother story. But so going from an undergraduate program to New York University under Beta Rich Baca, he was instrumental in really teaching the I guess more intense on the foundation of what I've learned in undergraduate. Uh, by the way, as a young person, well, you guys are young. I just want to let you know that I was given advice all along the way, and I ignored most advice, which there are many opportunities that I did not take. For example, Beta Rich Botka said, to be a cinematographer, you need to go work in a lab. You should go work in a motion picture photo lab, which I did not do. Instead, I just started making my own crazy horror movies instead. But having good teachers, having enthusiastic teachers, people who were supportive and enthusiastic about filmmaking and film as a medium was the most important thing. To find someone who is excited, who has some knowledge and is willing to share that is really priceless. So, and also as a student, I was fortunate because all of the students kind of banded together. The students that were into filmmaking and film photography. I mean, this is in the 1980s. Even back then, um, uh, videotape, or today called digital, was so upcoming and so important in the curriculum. And so all of the film geeks somewhat banded together and worked on each other's film projects. So having a community is and was super important. I think that continues to this day.
Yeah, definitely. Going off of that, why do you think there has been such a resurgence in people shooting film? Because I know me and Henry have seen, a lot of young people our age sort of being intrigued in the medium.
In this year and beyond, um, uh, there continues to be, and even in the last year, a huge resurgence of people either getting into photography and cinematography using film or rediscovering it. And I think that the great, you know, turn of the century digital discovery, I think the limitations of the medium of digital, the limitations of digital photography is what entices people to go beyond and to use film as a medium to create photographs and movies that do not resemble digital at all. I mean, film still has an aesthetic that is unlike any medium, and it is a medium that you have to work with, and um, you have to be very dedicated to get the results you're looking for. So whether it is still photography or cinematography, certainly there are an awful lot of cameras that are automatic where you just pop your film in and shoot. But there are so many folks that are going beyond that of then developing their own film and discovering the whole photochemical aspect of the medium. And that is what gives that person the power to take control of what they want their photographs to look like. And that power, of course, is something very simple, which is type of film. You're so much more restricted using film photography, whereas you are set to one ISO per roll of film. And then to make those choices of shutter speed and f-stop to give you the look you're looking for, all the combination of the type of film you choose, the shutter speed, the f-stop, to create the environment, the image, the feeling, and then, of course, follow through to photochemistry, whether you're doing it yourself, which gives you even more control, or sending it to a photo lab.
Okay. Um, what what's your favorite film stock and format to shoot with? Um, and where do you? I guess you've kind of already got delved into this, but where do you think film betters digital?
Uh, I don't have any one favorite film stock, only because I'm always testing new stocks or going back and revisiting old stocks. So uh, I approach film photography and movie making from a very practical perspective of what is it, what do I want to achieve, and what look am I looking for. So I'll choose a film based upon what look I'm looking for, and I understand I'm taking a lot of things for granted that I've been shooting film for decades and decades. So a lot of things I take for granted because I can, at a fingertip, I can say to myself, I want to use Kodak Ektar because it has a color that's going to pop, because I've used it so many times. Um, my favorite format would be 16 millimeter movie film. I just love it. It's to me a perfect medium because it's not as small as 8 millimeter or Super 8, and not as big as 35, and that goes with a budget as well. Shooting larger formats costs more money. This applies for still photography and motion picture photography. But I love 16 millimeter because it gives you a wide enough of a frame so that not only does it suit my motion picture purposes, but uh, stills can be easily pulled from it, and they look pretty darn good. Um, what was the question about digital? Is film better than digital, did you ask?
Where do you think film betters digital?
Um, in regards to film, um, how it betters digital, it's unfair to me for me to comment because I use digital so infrequently. I mean, in the past, I've shot lots of digital, digital movie cameras. Certainly, I have a lot of experience with it, but I don't think I have enough experience in the last 10 years digital to really offer an opinion of how film is better. I mean, in my mind, in my heart, I know film is better, but it just opens up, argument with people regarding, digital versus film, which I don't see that argument too much anymore. I think all of the camps have kind of calmed down and everyone kind of does their own thing and are in their own little world. I do think that people who shoot digital feel the need to mimic film photography, and that um, is exploding today because with the uh, introduction of so many filters, you know, so you could take your, iPhone footage and then apply a Super 8 filter to it, and then you get the sprocket hole. I mean, all of these drop downs and applications that give you a film look, they're trendy and they are they're very upsetting to me because I spend every single waking moment shooting film and trying to teach film photography and cinematography. That it's kind of crazy to see these drop downs and filters being used. But I guess that's a compliment.
Yeah, that's one of the questions that I had wrote down was what was your opinions on film emulation alerts? So that's really interesting, because I'm afraid I've used them before. But I guess it goes on to a different question because film can be quite expensive. Obviously, you have to develop and scan and obviously buy the stock. So, do you think that film will carry on increasing in price, or can you see a future where it sort of becomes cheaper?
Um, the price of using film is always looming over everyone's head that uses film. What the cost is and can one afford to use it, especially when shooting a movie. A roll of Super 8 film, generally speaking, is about $30 US, um, and that's three plus minutes, 3.5 minutes of film. That's not including the processing. So the cost, the idea of price and cost has to be really weighed, and all of us here at the Film Photography Project, we're always trying to, we consider ourselves thrifty and not cheap, but thrifty in a sense that, we want to squeeze as much out of our hard-earned cash as humanly possible. And that's something we always think about when introducing new products or offering new services. But the fact is, prices for everything are just going up and going up and going up. So, from the perspective of price, of course, digital is most cost effective, especially when you could purchase some used gear. And once you own that gear, you could shoot as many images as you like um, without additional cost. Uh, but it all depends what you're looking for, and it all depends what you want to do with your photography. So if someone wants to shoot film because it's a tangible medium and your negatives will last 100 years and it's archival and it gives the look that you're looking for, then once you learn your craft, it could be done in a thrifty manner, quite simply, of not shooting as many frames or organizing your motion picture and organizing your shots to be as thrifty as possible. So it's always a concern. Price is always a concern. I think prices will continue to go up. I think there will always be, and I certainly hope there will always be, a thrifty film or a less expensive film that someone can choose to use. But um, the question is, of course, is future of film photography, which is a frequently asked question, and this may actually bleed into one of your other questions. But film photography, I think, in the next decades, will be available to people, regardless of which company it is. People speculate about Fujifilm or Eastman Kodak or Ilford Film. Will they be around? I think the craft uh, of shooting images on film will be around because there are smaller startups, or if there was a collapse, I think that people would coat their own emulsions and sort of go back to the beginnings of film photography, because it is a craft and it is a very specific craft. And for example, why wet plate photography can be a very exciting niche, because so few people are doing it, and it offers an opportunity for people to see something remarkable happen right before their eyes, which is, coating light sensitive emulsion on a glass plate, shooting it, taking the images, and then developing them right before people's eyes to get that negative. So,
So, yeah, that's definitely one of the reasons I shoot film, because it creates such a unique image compared to the thousands of people. I live in a city center. If I shoot something on a weird film stock, I can get a completely unique photo to, there are thousands of people who walk past, the same place every single day. So that's one of the reasons why I shoot film. That we understand that the film photography project acts as a sort of non-profit third sector organization through two of your programs, which are the walking workshops and the camera donation program. Can you explain a bit more of these two programs from inspiration to success?
I will try. I will try. Uh, the film photography project was started in 2009 by myself with longtime college friend John Fideli. And it started simply as a podcast. And at that time, um, podcasting was relatively new, and we were able to grow a listener base rather quickly. And at that time, 2010, 2011, we started doing little meetups where literally we would just announce, hey, we're going to be at the Lomography store in New York City on this date, and show up. And then 50 people would show up. We did the same thing in London at Lomography in 2011 and 2012. And then as the sort of cast of the podcast kind of grew to a group, that's when we started initializing what we call walking workshops. And they're free workshops. They're usually annual. And we usually have them somewhere in the middle of the United States so that people can come to it from both coasts. And they're free, the minimal cost, maybe it's $25, and that really just pays for the refreshments and the snacks that we offer at these things. And at these workshops, we've done the basics in film photography of developing color film, developing black and white film, using large format film because so many people have never seen a large format camera. Wet plate, what is that about? What does it look like? So we'll have a wet plate photographer do a presentation. And although Film Photography Project is not a registered New Jersey not-for-profit organization, we certainly operate like one in the sense that we started our online store in 2011 to kind of fuel and fund all of our initiatives of what we want to do. And those initiatives being the walking workshops, as well as the school camera donation program, which we started here in the United States about 6-7 years ago. And that program, we send out a call to all of our podcast listeners to, if you have any analog gear that you're not using, send it to the FPP. We'll take it in, catalog it, and then when professors from high schools or universities contact us, we will send those cameras back out to those classrooms at no cost. So that program has been going on for many, many years. It's quite successful. Many of the teachers and professors do not have budgets to buy film photography equipment because we all know the budgets go to athletics. so, so nothing's changed here in the U.S. Regarding that. I'm being a little unfair, probably because as a youth I was in the darkroom and not on the track and field. But generally speaking, there's no budget, and these schools and institutions find us through probably Google search these days, contact us, fill out the proper paperwork, and then they're entitled to however many cameras they need. Frequently, pre-COVID-19, there was a waiting list. We've been stockpiling and cataloging cameras for the last year, and I expect in 2022 and beyond that we're probably going to be overwhelmed with requests. So we're a small group here, and the popularity of film photography has, blossomed in the last year. And I think we'll be at capacity of what we can handle. As soon as the pandemic is over, we'll probably have a very long waiting list for that school camera donation program. But our goals here are very simple: to promote the use of film, whether in a still camera or in a home movie camera. And we're all in it for the right reason. And the only people here that work, either work for the FPP on staff, let's say in our shipping department, but everyone else is a volunteer. So we're not motivated by money, and we are only interested in money to keep us funded so we continue to do what we do. It's really that simple of an organization.
Absolutely. Do you have any new or any more program initiatives on the horizon for the Film Photography Project?
One of the one of the goals of the FPP has always been to make film available in formats that no longer exist. And that goes back to 2012 when we first started looking into how can we reintroduce 620 film back into the market. Of course, here in the US, there are probably more so in the US because Kodak initiated the sale of 620 film cameras back in the 1950s, and so there are probably millions of Kodak Brownies and other cameras here in the U.S. that use 620 film. So we went through the process of saying, well, 620 film is the same as 120 film. The spool is different. So we made that a project, and we had the spools created, and we had the film manufactured. So now we offer 620 film in just about any flavor, so to speak. Some of our basics are made mass production, but some of the others, like if you want Tri-X or Portra or Kodak Ektar, those are still to this day hand rolled. As well as we also offer 35 millimeter hand-rolled film that is not commonly used for pictorial use. So a lot of lab films, a lot of strange films, a lot of expired films, films that normally would not be thought of to load and shoot in a still camera. And that just gives people options and ways of creating images that look a lot different than just popping in a roll of HP5 or Kodak Gold. Some of the more intensive projects in the last few years have been aimed at home movie film, because other than Super 8 and single perforated 16 millimeter, which is the standard in 16 millimeter, regular 8 millimeter didn't exist except for one film stock coming from FOMA. And there are here in the US, as probably in the UK and in Europe, millions of 8 millimeter standard 8 movie cameras. And there was a very small, there was no film except for one stock. So we kind of combined that wish list along with what's called double perforated 16 millimeter film. So back in the 1930s and 1940s, 1950s, there were many hand wound Bell and Howell, Kodak, and other brands of 16 millimeter cameras that took double perforated 16 millimeter film, which is no longer made. So we, in the last 2 years, have brought back double 8, also known as regular 8 film, double perforated 16 millimeter film, and 8 millimeter and 16 millimeter magazine film, so that people who own these cameras, and they're easy to find, you just go to your grandfather's house and you look in the attic, and there it is, the Kodak Brownie, or the Bell and Howell Filmo, or some other wind up home movie camera, and people are just completely fascinated with it, and they want film for it. Of course, we only had a hunch that, well, if we produce it, will people use it? And in the last 2 years, we've gone kind of, what's a good word? I don't know, kind of wild in producing this home movie film. And in the process, we now offer development and scan services for movie film. So it kind of it kind of became its own little segment of the film photography project. Whereas now, not only are we concentrating on film for still photography, but we're also producing film for motion picture photography, which is my love, my great love. So it all is full circle in many respects for me.
That's great, because going off, bringing back old formats. I found my nan's 8mm movie
Oh, nice.
camera, and I don't know how it was possible, but there was a roll already in there from, I don't know, from the 1960s or something,
Mm-hmm.
and it was still got an image, and it was like a really nice story because I kind of sent the video to her, and she was like, "Oh, this is this person, or this is this person," and I managed to shoot a roll with it, which was really good, really interesting. But how do you go about bringing back these sort of classic formats? Do you sort of contact Kodak and ask them to, bring to, you get the film in bulk and then obviously hand wind them onto the reel, or is it a different way?
Uh, Bringing back old formats. I mean, especially with movie film. There's no one place or one step for this process. So let's say when we decide we're going to bring back regular 8mm film. First of all, we're talking 1 to 2 years just to make that happen because there's so many factors involved. Not to mention, um, having good credit and a relationship with a bank. I mean, uh, to bring back a film format, there, it's mind-boggling. Actually, I would say it's completely mind-boggling. So once again, I could attest to my experience and age and amount of years in the business as very helpful to helping me do this. No man is an island. I certainly don't do these things by myself. We have a little group here. Um, and everyone has their specialty of the film photography project uh, cast, so to speak. So um, someone like Leslie Lazenby was instrumental with the 620 film and with bringing in color chemistry kits. Um, Matt Mirage is keen on photochemistry and very helpful in that area. Owen McCafferty is a home movie shooter and was instrumental in sort of restoking my interest in film outside of what existed, which was Super 8 film and single perforated 16mm film. So when an idea is pitched, like, hey, well, what about regular 8? And I would simply say, well, what about regular 8? I don't own a camera. What do you want from me? It was really, uh, you know, when ideas are pitched, uh, it takes months to even think about it. So, Owen McCafferty would then send me a camera, you know, like, oh, I would look at it and I'd be amazed. And then upon doing some research and seeing just how many millions of cameras exist and so many different types, and, from the Kodak Brownie to um, the Zeiss Icon Moviecon camera, made in, at the time, West Germany, which is one of the most remarkable little pieces of machinery I've ever seen. So from there, then we have to start at ground zero of how can we make this happen, and that happens by juggling a bunch of balls in the air at the same time of number one, is there film available? And that's when we discovered that uh, FOMA in the Czech Republic makes double eight film, and it was a black and white film stock. But uh, so how do we achieve bringing back color film? Well, so we contact Eastman Kodak to see if the stock is available. Is the stock available? Can they do the perforations? If they cannot do the perforations, where can we find a factory that can do the perforations? Who can do the packaging? So all of these factors, who's going to pay for all this? I mean, so all of this come together as a project. And then, of course, once the project is greenlit, all the people that are involved, all the gears are turning, so to speak, all the money is spent, and then it's then it's the risk factor of once everything is executed and the film is made, will people buy it? And that's, sometimes we don't have the answers to that question. And that's why I think so many organizations like Lomography will do a Kickstarter, whereas they use a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo program to bring in the cash first to fund the project. And I can't tell anyone why we haven't done that, but we haven't. We've always, I think we always had a belief in what we're doing to the core, and it's almost mystical, to the sense that you will say, oh, well, you brought back 8mm film, you brought back double perforated film, you brought back 620 film, so we just had a gut feeling about these things, and thank goodness to this day that all of these projects have been successful and have not driven the film photography project out of business. So,
what would your advice be for anyone who's maybe considering starting to shoot film? They're intrigued in the format. What would your advice be for them?
well, my advice to anyone thinking of getting into film would be to go as basic as you can and spend the time doing your research. I mean, so I'm a member of many threads, whether they're on Facebook or another platform, and the answers to most questions these days are available to everyone. But everyone's asking questions and no one's looking. So my advice is, before you post that question, that newbie question, do your research, because the basics of photography, film photography or cinematography, are so fundamental and so basic that we all can do it. We all may not be great at it, but we all can try, and we all need the basic facts. So I would say, get the basic facts. And there are so many tools available these days, whether it's a blog or even perusing YouTube. There are so many examples of how to, and I use it myself. So when I first got into editing, using Final Cut as the platform, I didn't take a class. I just started using it and cutting the YouTube videos. Whenever I ran into a roadblock or accidentally hit a key on a keyboard that I shouldn't have hit, I rushed off to YouTube to find the answers. So I highly encourage people to go. I mean, something as simple and as going to the library, physical library, and finding and dusting the dust off of all those great books that Kodak put out in the 1970s and 1980s. They're literally volumes of basics of film photography, and I really feel that folks need to kind of dig into that, because as a digital shooter, I'm talking not me, but I'm talking about a student. There's so many things that a student or a person starting does not know, because their whole life has been digital. So the simplest things, like not opening the back of your camera to expose your film, or if you're shooting a movie, don't open and always check your film because you're going to expose it, or the fact that you can't change your ISO mid-roll in using film. The concept of the ISO being assigned to the type of film you're using, it's all mind-numbing for someone shooting digital. So I encourage people to do their research, go out there and just do it. It's really that simple, and go basic. Try to get out of, and I offer this same advice for digital shooters, which is take it out of automatic, take your camera out of program mode and go manual, and really understand what the effect of light hitting your subject is doing to the digital sensor or the piece of film that's in your camera. And that will open up the whole world to you, because once you take control of what you're doing and you are controlling the light, whether it's shooting a specific time of day or using artificial light, that's when you could start taking control of your photography or movies, because now you'll be setting the tone of what it is you want it to look like, because anyone can snap a picture these days. Just use your phone. But to take it beyond that, you have to have an understanding of what you're doing. And that's the key, in my opinion.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I started on a Soviet Russian Zenit B 35mm camera, and that's like completely, fully manual. So
Oh,
I kind
yeah.
of learned the hard way with, you know, getting the right settings and making sure it's all working properly. And I know Henry's got a Canon AE1 again, which is all fully manual. Well, it's got a light meter, but so yeah, I couldn't agree more with just you will get there in the end with uh, learning and getting a good image, I think. I'll ask you one final question, Michael. What's your plans for the future? Obviously, do you have any sort of horror films coming up with shot on film, or what's the future with film photography projects?
Well, in a post-pandemic world, I feel in many respects that the film photography project uh, is almost at a place to reboot, because the fact that we've been doing the podcast for 11 years, we're now going to be skipping a generation. So, uh, in many respects, um, what we do, the basics of teaching the basics and talking about the basics, I think are more important than ever. So, the future, I think, of the film photography project is to forge on, uh, to uh, assist and help um, folks who are still new to it. And there's really been a never-ending cycle of people, especially when it comes to photochemistry, of people developing their own film. How to, why did this happen? You know, uh, the simplest of problems never end. So I think that's exciting, because it tells me that there's, a whole new group of people interested in film photography. So I see in probably the next years, probably us continuing to do um, events, or us showing up at other folks' events to do what we do, which is to be excited about shooting film, and the ongoing quest to bring back film formats. And that's a tough one, because many of the machines for various formats, like the 126 cartridge format, which most of my requests fall upon deaf ears, because most people don't know that the format exists or don't have an interest in it. But fact is, there are millions of Kodak Instamatic cameras out there in the world, and that would be a wonderful thing. But we're limited to discovering or finding that old factory or that machine, or what happened to the machines that used to exist to make this film format. Um, it's a never-ending discovery to find little pockets of folks that or a case of Film Ferrania comes to mind, the company in Italy who has been uh, desperately trying to reboot the factory for the last decade. And it's a great challenge, but it's also very promising, because a place like Film Ferrania probably has the machines to make 126 film and 127 film and all these lost film formats. So we're going to continue on doing what we're doing, and we're still primarily the same core group that we were 10 years ago, just as excited about film photography and now cinematography. Um, and as with any craft or artistic medium, uh, we can only guess the future. We it's not set. There's so many other factors involved, but we're always hoping for the best and remain amazingly excited, even after 10 years um, of either doing podcast or videos or reaching out to people who are also using film as a medium.
Well, I think that's a really nice way to end the interview, and I hope that you carry on bringing back lots of other formats, because I would love to shoot like 16 mil or I don't know, some other formats in the future.
That'd be great.